Hello and welcome to onboarding session number 3, which is about datasets and properties. Let's jump back to RTILA Studio. So now I'm on my project panels, and today we're going to create a new project, quick start, and we're going to work on books to scrape for this little lesson. And this is the URL, and I start my project. Create a new project. Now the subject, the first item of today's subject that you need to understand is that when you create a new dataset here, I click new dataset, by default it will be a list mode. So list mode is adapted to this kind of page. So for any page that presents a list of products, a list of services, a group of one element. So the element is a book, but there are many of it, or many of that entity. So that's where you use the list. And in list mode, what it tells RTILA is that every item is a row. Every element is a row. This book here, the first book is one row, the second book is a second row, and the third book is a third row, and so on. That's what list will tell RTILA. And then it will tell RTILA that within this container of each book, whatever item is inside, like the title, the price, the image, will come as a column. That's what the list mode will teach RTILA. And I'll show you that. So let's catch three information: the title, the price, and the thumbnail. So I click on add the property, call it title. I use the CSS selector point and click. So this is a very useful feature of RTILA that allows you, even if you're not a programmer, to just click point and catch the CSS locator. We will see later on in the CSS course on how to do it manually and select your own CSS path and more resilient and so on. But for now, this does the job, and how it works is very simple. You click on CSS selector right here in the input field, and then you hover and you go and you click on the element that you want to catch. So for example, in my first property, it's a title. I click on the title. Now RTILA will try and grab all the similar elements of what I'm looking at. So you see, it tried to get me all the book titles. There are 20 books on this page, but I'm getting 94 elements. I'm getting way more, way too much. So when this happens, RTILA is selecting more than it should select. The way it works is that you just have to click again what you do not want. So because I want to focus on the book titles, I don't want the categories stuff. So if I click on categories stuff now, it will discount them, it will remove them. Now I have 40 elements. That's better, but it's still double the number of books. And I can see in the results here that I am getting empty lines. So this CSS selector is not the best. And what happens is that sometimes for the same element, there may be different containers. You see here, I chose this container, but there is another container that is encapsulating it, which is the H3. Let's try that. So I select all this, I delete, and then I use again the point and click, but I don't click on the text itself. I click on the container of the text. I click now. That's better. I'm getting 20 results. It's using the H3, and the H3 is really about the book titles. And now I can see that the book titles are being captured right here. There are 20 of them. And I'm good. I got the right number, the right CSS locator. Now let's move to the second property. Create a new property, and now we want to get the price. So as I told you, the price, every element of each type of entity will come as a column. So you see now I created the price, and if I click in the price right here, RTILA is able to get the 20 price, and you can always, when you are in list mode, you have to ensure that you always have the same number between the elements. Because if I have 20 titles and 19 prices, then I don't know which one of the books is missing the price, and it will create some mismatch. So you have to make sure that you're always matching the same number. If you don't have the same number, something is wrong with your CSS locator. So right now it's good. I got 20 books and I get 20 prices, and it's the right price for the right book. A light in the attic is at £51.77. That's there. And then the tipping, the velvet is at 53.74. That's correct. You just double check very quickly. We're good. We can move into the third property, which is the image or the thumbnail in this case. And again, I'm going to use the CSS selector, and then I'm going to try this one. I click here. How many do I get? 20. Yes, good. And I'm getting the image. Yes, let's look at the end of it. It's a JPEG. This looks good. So worst case scenario, you can just catch this Control-C and let me open it in a browser just in case. Make sure that that's the light in the attic. So it's getting the right data. So I'm good. Now I have 3 properties in list mode, and you can see that everything is corresponding, that the right data is at the right place. Now, if I am to use the wrong data set type, then the data will be completely messed up. For example, if I switch right now into detail mode, you can see that now RTILA thinks that this is one single product, and all the fields that we are catching are all columns of the same product, and then it doesn't know what to do with so many prices. So you put all the prices in one price bucket, all the thumbnails in one thumbnail bucket, so you don't get what you want. And that's where it's important to understand that you have to use the right dataset type. And when you see a non-concordance of data in your results right here, it's probably because you have the wrong dataset. Now, if I switch back to list mode, the data is organized properly. So that is the first thing that you need to understand. And let's do the same experience, but on a specific book. And before I do that, I want to show you another feature. So when you need to interact with the page inside the studio, you can see that right now, every move I make is highlighting an element, but I don't want to select an element right now. I want to navigate in the website. So to do so, I have here a little option that is called disable the selector. So it will disable the point and click selector. And now I can just browse, I can click here and load this book, come back to the home page, do whatever I have to do. I choose a book and I'm gonna scrape it. I'm gonna use it as a demo. So let's use this one. You see here, as soon as I am on a page that is actually a detailed page, I've lost all the data for 2 reasons. One, the CSS selector may not be the same. In this case, it could be the same, but also the structure of the data is completely different. Now that I'm on a single element page, a single type of element page, I need to switch to detail mode. If I switch to detail mode, we start to have 3 columns. We start to be better. We just need to correct the CSS locator, which are different here. So let's just delete the CSS locators, all of them, and we start from scratch here. And then I'm going to go and get the title. I get 1 result. So you see on the single page, it's H1, not H3. I got the title right here. And then I go and click on the second one for the price, and it's going to be so it's getting 7 prices. So pay attention. It's getting 7 prices because if I scroll down, there's actually the suggestion books, and it's getting me the prices of the suggestion books, which I don't want. And remember, to get them out, you just click them again. And if I click them again, it removes all the suggestion products, and it focuses on my main product, and it's giving me 1 result for one price for 1 title. I am in number concordance, and the price is right here. It's good. Now let's move to the image. I use CSS selector. I click on this image, and it got me 7. Again, same story, because it's getting the other images of the other suggested books. So I come back here and I say no. I click right here. I don't want these. I'm back to 1 image, and it's the right image. And I go back now. I have my 3 CSS selector that are adapted to the book single page, and I switch to detail, and now I have the data in proper order. So this is why it's important to understand this, and I hope it's clear. By practice, you will see that it becomes pretty natural. Now, the second item of today's onboarding session is that sometimes for the same element, you may have different information that are contained in there. For example, if I go on the, I'm right now on the thumbnail. So inner text is giving me this image, but actually there may be some other information. If I move on link href, there is no data, null. If I check on input value, it's not defined, but sometimes there is something. If I go to inner text, it gives me the main image. If I go to inner HTML, it gives me the same. But if I go to attributes, I can specify something. So we know that for SEO purposes, images, they have what is called the alt attribute, ALT. Let me see if what is in there in the ALT attribute. ALT, I type it here. Oh, actually, they use this title book, which is the right way. But also, there's other attributes. For example, there may be another image like a zoomed in image, and it may be in the source of the image. So if I type SRC, you see I'm getting a different image than when I use inner text. So there are two types of images, and you can, in the same element, there are multiple information, and this is where you use these attributes to switch between the information that are contained in one single element. So if you're more interested in the source, then you come and use the attribute SRC. If you're happy with the input value that gives you the main URL, sorry, I need to remove the attribute from here. Inner text. If you're happy with this, it's fine. But just the knowledge is that you can switch between the attributes and catch different values for the same element. Next point is that sometimes we want to filter the data. So once we select the right attribute, let's say there is something that I don't want, or let's say I want to target something specific. So for example, here in the price, I am getting the pound sign in front. And that's where I can use filter right here. I can create a new filter, and you have existing what is called regex, regular expressions, that allows you to filter and extract or focus on certain type of data. For example, if I wanted to focus on just getting the email address in the middle of the paragraph, I will use email address. But in this particular example, I want to just get an integer, just a number. So if I click integer, it actually removes also the decimals. So that's not good for me. Let me see if I can find a number or something like that. Positive number. If I do that, good. Positive number will kick out the character of the pound, and now I have cleaned up my data. So this is where filters play a role to help you format, clean up, focus, ignore, amend, append, prepend your data. We will cover this much more because you can put some JavaScript filters as well and things like this. You also have conditions. If you want to apply conditions, that it should start with something greater than this value because you don't want to catch certain things. So this is where you play around with filters and conditions to make sure that you only get the data that you want. Let's save, always save what you're doing. And I forgot two other settings that we want to see here. One is the OCR. So when you click on OCR right here, you can enable it, and what it does is that it can take an image and then read the text that is in the image. So it's optical character recognition, I think what it means. So it will add a column and give you the text that was on the image. We will cover this also later on in a more advanced course. And then the second option that I want to finalize on is the download. So the download option, when you enable it and your property is about an image, like this one here, if I enable it for the image, then it will download actually that image into my local drive. And it will add a column with the path where it's downloaded. Usually it's downloaded into documents, RTILA, and then downloads the folder. So you can add a dynamic file name if you don't want the original file name that is here. You can also change the extension. You can add a timestamp to differentiate. You can add a hash key also to differentiate your images. So this also will be covered more extensively in the next courses. Right now I just disable it and save so that we can move to the next point. Now that we covered the datasets and the properties, how to select them, how to filter them. You understand how it works, at least at the first level. We're going to look at the other configuration options that we have. So let's look first at the dataset configuration here. At the bottom, you have configure dataset. So when you click here, you can rename your dataset. For example, instead of dataset 1, I can call it books info. I can have multiple datasets and arrange them one underneath another. You can decide to skip empty rows or not. You can prevent duplicates. You can include the URL of the page. You can add row numbers in your results. And you can discard redirections. There are multiple things you can try around. Usually the default settings works pretty well, but you have these settings just so you know. So that's the first thing about configure datasets. And then let's say there is also other information. For example, here it's a table, and then again I want them in different arrangements. So I could create a second dataset. You see here, now I have a second dataset, and I'm going to call it, how they call it, product information. So I will go configure dataset, and I call this product information. And the interesting part here is that on the same page, I have information which is in detail mode, which is about the book. But then there is a table. So table is not detail mode. It will not get me the data. So my second data set, I keep it as a list, because that's exactly what it is. It is a list within a book. So now if I want to get the other information, I can use the list, and then I can go and create this one, UPC, and I get this, but I don't want these, so I only get the UPC. Then I go to the next one, and I want the product type. Product type, and then I click, I want this, but I don't want this, and I don't want this. I get one result, product type is here, it's books, and so on. So you see here, once you understand these principles, you're able to catch every single data in its right dataset type without missing any information, without having something going where it should not. So I'm going to save again. And I will go back now into the home page. So I disable the selector because I want to navigate, and I'll go back to the home page to show you the last point. There is one information or one event that can happen quickly in your experimentations with RTILA, is what we call custom collections. So the only thing you need to know about the custom collection is that sometimes RTILA needs to know from which grid you want to pull the products or the elements. Sometimes on the same page there could be 2, 3, 4 types of grids. For example, there could be here the books, and then there could be another grid which is about the ebooks, and then there could be another grid which is about audiobooks, for example. And then each table would have like slightly different headers and stuff. So RTILA would need to understand from where it needs to read. And even sometimes in a single page, in a single grid or a single group, it may need that precision still to know that this is exactly the table I want to address. So for now, you just need to know about it. So when sometimes it happens that even though you have the right CSS locators, and then you get the titles, but then for the prices and the thumbnails, you only get the first line, that means that you need a custom collection. And just so you know, custom collection is just another CSS locator that tells us what is the container that encapsulates every element. And the place where we add it is in configure dataset, sorry. It has to be in list mode. So when you're in list mode, this only applies for list mode, by the way, custom collection. So when you're in list mode dataset type, you will have to come here and say, this is the container of every book. This is the CSS locator that will inform RTILA that this is the capsulating container. So this is enough for today. Just so you know about custom collection, we will have an in-depth coverage of custom collection and how to find them in later courses. But for today, we hope that we covered enough, at least so that you understand what are the dataset types, what are the first challenges and configurations you need to understand how to click and point and get the selectors, and then how to use different attributes of the same selector, apply filters and conditions, so that you can start to get a little bit of data. Thank you for today, and we will advance even more on the coming onboarding courses. Thank you.